I never believed in gut feelings until I bought the house on Maple Street. The real estate agent kept apologizing for the price. Too low for the neighborhood, she said. Red flag number one. But my student loans were crushing me, and the mortgage payment was half what I'd pay anywhere else in Portland. The smell hit me first. Not mold or decay like you'd expect in an old house. Something metallic mixed with burnt plastic, lingering in the back rooms where sunlight never quite reached. I bought air fresheners, scrubbed every surface, even hired professionals. The smell always came back by morning. Week 2, I found the letters. Dozens of them stuffed behind the loose baseboard in the master bedroom, all addressed to someone named Marcus Chen, all from the same woman, pleading with him to stop watching her, to leave her family alone. The dates went back 3 years. The previous owner's name was James Morrison. I should have left then, should have packed my boxes and walked away from my deposit. Instead, I Googled Marcus Chen and found nothing. No social media, no public records, no obituaries, like he'd never existed at all. The walls started whispering on a Tuesday night in October. Not voices exactly, more like the sound old houses make when they settle, but with rhythm, with purpose. I pressed my ear to the bedroom wall and heard what sounded like someone slowly dragging their fingernails across the inside of the drywall. The sound moved from room to room, following a pattern I couldn't decode. I called my brother in Seattle, told him about the smell, the letters, the sounds. He laughed and said old houses were always weird, suggested I get a dog for company. But when I mentioned the name Marcus Chen, the line went quiet for too long. "Where did you hear that name?" His voice had changed. Careful now, guarded. "Letters I found. Why? Nothing. Just maybe you should come stay here for a while, until you figure things out." He hung up before I could ask what he meant. That night, the temperature in my bedroom dropped 20 degrees between midnight and 1 a.m. My breath came out in visible puffs while I lay under 3 blankets, listening to something walk circles in the attic above me. Heavy footsteps, deliberate. The ceiling creaked with each step, following the same path over and over. Around the perimeter, pause at the center, then back around. I grabbed my phone to record the sound, but the microphone picked up nothing. Just my own ragged breathing and the whistle of wind through gaps in the windows I couldn't find. Morning brought silence and normal temperatures. No footprints in the attic dust when I finally worked up the courage to look. Just old insulation and empty space. But in the center, directly above my bed, someone had carved deep scratches into the wooden beam. Fresh scratches. The wood shavings were still pale and damp. I started sleeping in my car. On Friday, I found the basement door. Not hidden exactly, just painted the same color as the wall and tucked behind the furnace where you wouldn't notice unless you were looking. The key was hanging on a nail just above the frame, like someone wanted it to be found eventually. The smell was stronger down there, overwhelming, but not coming from the basement itself, coming from behind the far wall. The concrete was newer there, a different shade of gray. When I pressed my ear against it, I could hear something like running water or breathing, slow and steady and wrong. I called a contractor that afternoon, asked about breaking through a basement wall, just theoretical. He quoted me $3,000 and asked why I'd want to do something like that. Said it might compromise the foundation, might bring down the whole house. Saturday night, I dreamed about Marcus Chen. In the dream, he looked exactly like me but older, grayer. He stood in my bedroom pointing at the wall where I'd heard the scratching. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. Behind him, the basement door stood open and that metallic smell drifted up like smoke. I woke up to find muddy footprints leading from my front door to the basement entrance. The basement door was open. The key was back on its nail, but now it was warm to the touch. hot enough to leave a red mark on my thumb. Sunday morning, I packed everything I could fit in my car, left the rest behind. The house could keep it. Whatever lived there could have it all. But as I pulled out of the driveway, I saw him in my rearview mirror. Marcus Chen, standing in the upstairs window watching me leave. He looked exactly like me, but his eyes were all wrong, too dark, too knowing. I drove straight to Seattle, to my brother's apartment, didn't stop for gas or food or sleep. When I finally told him everything, he got quiet again. That same careful quiet from our phone call. "I need to tell you something," he said, "about why I moved to Seattle 5 years ago, about the house I used to rent in Portland, the one on Maple Street." He showed me his old driver's license. The address was my address, 1247 Maple Street. But the name printed under his photo wasn't my brother's name. It was Marcus Chen. I've been staying in hotels ever since. Different city every few days, but sometimes, in the mirror, I catch glimpses of someone who looks like me but isn't me. Someone with eyes that are too dark and too knowing. And I wonder if Marcus Chen was running from someone too, or if I'm just the next link in a chain that goes back further than any of us can remember. The house is still for sale. The price dropped again last week. Someone new will buy it soon, drawn by the deal that's too good to be true. And maybe they'll find my letters hidden behind the baseboard, the ones I wrote but never sent. The ones warning about the smell and the sounds and the thing that lives behind the basement wall. But they won't listen. They never do. Don't forget to like this video if it gave you chills, and subscribe for more stories that'll keep you awake at night. And in our next tale, you'll discover what happens when the GPS takes you somewhere that doesn't exist on any map. The emergency broadcast interrupted my Spotify playlist at exactly 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night. Nothing unusual about that. We get weather warnings all the time in Kansas. Tornado season, after all. But this wasn't about weather. This is not a test. All residents of Johnson County are advised to remain indoors until further notice. Do not answer your door. Do not respond to voices calling your name from outside. Repeat, do not respond to familiar voices outside your home. Then silence, dead air for 30 seconds before my playlist resumed like nothing happened. I lived alone in a rental house on the outskirts of Shawnee, close enough to Kansas City to commute, but far enough out to afford something with a yard. The kind of place where you knew your neighbors but didn't really know them, if that makes sense. Wave from the driveway, small talk about the weather, borrowed lawnmower territory. The broadcast should have worried me more than it did. Instead, I felt strangely calm, almost relieved, like I'd been waiting for this specific warning my entire life without knowing it. I turned off all the lights and pulled the curtains closed, sat on my couch in the dark with my phone, scrolling through local news and social media for any mention of what was happening. Nothing. No follow-up alerts, no news coverage, no panicked posts from neighbors. Just the usual Thursday night noise of people living their lives. At midnight, someone knocked on my front door. 3 soft taps, pause, then 3 more. Polite, patient, the kind of knock you'd use when visiting elderly relatives or delivering flowers. I crept to the window and peered through the gap in the curtains. My neighbor Mike stood on my porch, still wearing his work clothes. He'd been laid off from the Ford plant 6 months ago, but he still got dressed every morning like he had somewhere to go. His wife Sarah used to joke about it when we'd chat over the fence. Mike looked normal. Tired maybe, but normal. He knocked again, same pattern. 3 taps, pause, 3 more. "Hey man, I know you're in there." His voice was exactly right. Same slight accent, same tone he'd used 100 times when borrowing my jumper cables or asking about my garbage pickup schedule. "Sarah's missing. I think something happened to her. Can you help me look?" The emergency broadcast echoed in my memory. Do not respond to familiar voices outside your home. But this was Mike, real Mike. I could see his breath in the cold air, could hear the genuine worry in his voice. Sarah was a sweet woman who brought me homemade cookies every Christmas. If something had happened to her, I reached for the deadbolt, then stopped. Something about the way Mike stood on my porch bothered me. Too still. In all the times he'd visited, Mike had never stood perfectly motionless. He was a fidgeter, always shifting weight from foot to foot, running his hands through his hair, checking his phone. This Mike stood like a statue. "Please," he said, "I'm really scared something bad happened. The police won't come out here. They say they're dealing with some kind of emergency downtown. You're the only one I can ask." I watched him through the curtain gap for 10 minutes. He never moved, never shifted position, never stopped looking directly at my front door, even though he couldn't possibly know where I was standing. His expression never changed either. The same look of concerned worry, frozen in place like a photograph. At 12:30, he finally walked away. But he didn't walk to his house next door. He walked to the house across the street, climbed the porch steps, and knocked with the same pattern. 3 soft taps, pause, 3 more. I couldn't hear what he said from that distance, but I could see him talking through the storm door. Same gestures, same posture. After a few minutes, he moved to the next house, then the next, working his way through the neighborhood methodically, house by house. By 1 a.m., he'd visited 12 houses. At each one, he stood perfectly still while he talked, never fidgeting, never changing position. At each one, no one answered their door. I tried calling the real Mike's cell phone, straight to voicemail. Tried Sarah's number too, same thing. Then I called 911. "All operators are busy at this time. Your call is important to us. Please remain on the line." Hold music, soft jazz that went on for 20 minutes before I gave up. Around 2 a.m., I heard my name being called from the backyard. "Hey neighbor," Sarah's voice bright and cheerful. "I made those snickerdoodles you liked. Want to come try them while they're still warm?" I didn't look out the back window, couldn't make myself do it, but I could hear her moving around back there, footsteps on the wooden deck, the scrape of patio furniture being moved. "I know you're awake in there. I can see your phone light." Her voice was exactly right. Same laugh in it that Sarah always had when she teased me about being a night owl. "Come on, don't be antisocial. Mike's at work and I get lonely." Mike worked second shift at the plant, except Mike didn't work anywhere anymore. And it was 2 a.m. on a Friday morning. The footsteps circled my house slowly. Sarah's voice followed, keeping up a steady stream of normal conversation. Asking about my job, mentioning the weather, wondering if I'd seen the new restaurant that opened up on Johnson Drive. All perfectly normal Sarah things to say, but she walked the same path over and over, around the house, pause at each window, then continue, never varying the route, never stopping the cheerful chatter. At 3 a.m., both voices called to me at once. Mike from the front porch, Sarah from the back deck, having a conversation through my house. "She's being stubborn," Mike said. "Always was," Sarah replied. "Remember when we tried to get her to come to the block party? Maybe we should just wait. She'll have to come out eventually. Or we could try the other thing." "What other thing?" Long pause. Too long. "The thing we discussed," Sarah said, and her voice was different now. Flatter, like someone reading from a script they didn't quite understand. I huddled on my couch with all the lights off, phone clutched in my hands, listening to my neighbors discuss what to do about me in voices that were perfectly right and completely wrong. Around dawn, the voices stopped. I waited until full daylight before checking the windows. Mike and Sarah's house looked normal. Cars in the driveway, newspapers on the porch, everything exactly as it should be. I called Mike's number again. This time, he answered. "Oh, hey, neighbor, what's up?" He sounded tired but normal. The real Mike. I could hear Sarah in the background asking who was calling. Are you guys okay? I thought I heard something strange last night. Strange how? We went to bed early. Sarah wasn't feeling well. I almost asked about the emergency broadcast, about him knocking on doors, about her offering me cookies at 2 a.m. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he sounded so genuinely confused. Maybe it was the fear that if I told him what I'd seen, the fake Mike and Sarah would know I'd been watching. Never mind, just thought I heard someone in your yard. Probably just raccoons. Yeah, they've been getting into everyone's garbage lately. Thanks for looking out for us. I hung up and immediately started searching for apartments in other cities. Put in my 2 weeks' notice at work that afternoon. Told my landlord I had a family emergency and needed to break my lease early. But before I left town, I drove past my old neighborhood one more time. It was a Tuesday evening just after sunset. As I turned onto Maple Street, I saw them. Mike and Sarah walking hand in hand down the sidewalk like they were taking an evening stroll. But they weren't walking to anywhere. They were just walking. The same route I'd watched fake Mike take that night, house to house. And at each house they'd stop and wave at the windows. Perfectly synchronized waves, like they were following choreography. I drove faster. In my rearview mirror, I saw them both turn to watch my car leave. They stood in the middle of the street, holding hands, perfectly still. Even from a distance, I could see they were smiling. I've been living in Denver for 3 months now. Different state, different time zone, different life. But sometimes I get emergency broadcasts on my phone that don't match any official alerts. Warnings about staying indoors, about not answering doors, about not trusting familiar voices, and sometimes, late at night, I hear knocking. 3 soft taps, pause, then 3 more. When I check the peephole, there's never anyone there. But I can hear voices in the hallway, having conversations about me in tones that are perfectly right and completely wrong. I think whatever was wearing Mike and Sarah's faces that night learned something about me, something it liked. And now it's following me, house to house, city to city, knocking on doors and asking neighbors for help. The scary part isn't that it might find me. The scary part is that someday someone might actually open their door. Hit that like button if this story made you double-check your locks tonight. And don't forget to subscribe for more tales from the dark side. Coming up next, we'll explore what happens when your reflection starts moving on its own. My daughter stopped recognizing me on a Tuesday in March. Not all at once. That might have been easier to accept. Emma just looked at me across the breakfast table with the polite confusion you'd show a stranger who'd wandered into your kitchen by mistake. "I'm sorry," she said, voice small and careful. "But who are you?" The doctors called it retrograde amnesia, possible result of the concussion from her bike accident 2 weeks earlier. They showed me brain scans with dark spots that meant nothing to me, used words like temporal lobe damage and memory consolidation issues. They said it might be temporary, might improve with time. But the Emma in the hospital bed wasn't my Emma anymore. Same face, same voice, same scar on her chin from falling off the monkey bars when she was 6. But when I told her about that scar, she looked at me like I was making up stories about a stranger's life. "I don't remember any monkey bars," she said. "I don't remember you at all." We brought her home to the house she'd lived in for all 11 years of her life. Her room was exactly as she'd left it. Harry Potter posters, half-finished art projects, stuffed animals arranged on her bed in the specific order that had always helped her sleep. She walked through it like a museum, touching things with distant curiosity. "This is a nice room," she said. "Did I really live here?" Past tense, like she was talking about someone else entirely. The first week was the hardest. Emma was polite but distant, treating me like a well-meaning caretaker rather than her father. She relearned our daily routines without remembering why we'd started them. Pancakes on Sunday mornings, movie nights on Fridays, the way she always left her shoes by the front door in a messy pile I'd pretended to complain about. Now she lined her shoes up perfectly every time. "I must have been very messy before," she said when I mentioned it. "I'm sorry, I'll try to be better." Better. Like the daughter I'd raised for 11 years had been a rough draft, and this was the improved version. I started keeping a journal of everything that was different. Small things mostly. Emma had always bitten her nails. Now her nails were perfect, growing long and neat. She'd been allergic to strawberries since she was 3. Now she ate them without any reaction. Her handwriting had changed too, neater and more controlled. Most disturbing was her sleep schedule. The old Emma had been a restless sleeper, always climbing into my bed after nightmares or storms. This Emma slept exactly 8 hours every night, never stirring, never crying out. I'd check on her and find her lying perfectly still, hands folded on her chest like she was practicing for something. 3 weeks after the accident, I found the drawings. Hidden under her mattress, dozens of pencil sketches and handwriting I didn't recognize. Not Emma's careful new script, but something older, spidery, adult. The drawings showed our house, but wrong. Rooms in different places, extra doors that didn't exist, windows looking out onto landscapes I'd never seen. And in every drawing there was a man who looked like me, but wasn't me. Same height, same general build, but his face was always turned away or obscured by shadow. In one sketch, he stood in Emma's doorway, watching her sleep. In another, he sat at our kitchen table with his hands folded, waiting. I confronted Emma about the drawings after dinner. "I don't know what those are," she said, examining them with mild interest. "They're not mine. Maybe they were already under the mattress." But I'd cleaned her room thoroughly before bringing her home from the hospital. The drawings hadn't been there before. That night, I set up a baby monitor in Emma's room. Old habit from when she was little and prone to night terrors. I told myself I was being overly cautious, but something about her perfect stillness while sleeping bothered me more than I wanted to admit. At 2:17 a.m., the monitor crackled to life with the sound of Emma's voice. "I know you're listening," she said quietly. Not to me, to someone else in the room. "He's starting to suspect. What should we do about that?" Silence. Then Emma's voice again, different this time. Older, less like a child. "We stick to the plan. He'll adjust eventually. They always do." "But what if he doesn't? What if he keeps asking questions?" "Then we'll have to help him forget too, like we helped her forget." I was down the hallway and through her door before I'd consciously decided to move. Emma's room was empty except for her, lying in bed with her eyes closed, breathing slow and steady, the perfect picture of a sleeping child. But I'd heard her talking, heard 2 different voices coming from the same throat. "Emma," I whispered. Her eyes opened immediately, too alert for someone who'd been asleep. "Dad, is everything okay? You look scared." The concern in her voice sounded genuine. The way she sat up, rubbing her eyes with the back of her hand, looked exactly like something the old Emma would have done. For a moment, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. I thought I heard voices, just me. I was having a dream about before the accident. I think I remembered something. Hope fluttered in my chest. "What did you remember?" "I remembered that I love you." She smiled, and for the first time since the accident, it looked like my daughter's smile. "I'm sorry I've been so strange. I think my brain is still healing." I hugged her then, and she felt like Emma. Smelled like Emma. But as I held her, I noticed something that made my blood go cold. Her heartbeat was wrong, too slow, too steady, like a metronome keeping perfect time. The next morning, I called my sister in California, asked if Emma could stay with her for a few weeks while I figured some things out. Recovery time, I said. Change of scenery might help with the memory issues. Of course, Lisa said. But are you sure you're okay? You sound stressed. I'm fine. Just need some time to process everything that's happened. But when I told Emma about the trip, she went very still. I don't want to go, she said. I like it here. I like our routine. It's just for a little while. Aunt Lisa has been wanting to see you. I don't remember Aunt Lisa. That's why it would be good for you to meet her. She can tell you stories about when you were little. Emma stared at me for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, flatter. I don't want to hear stories about before. Before doesn't matter anymore. I'm better now. That afternoon, while Emma was at school, I went through her room systematically, found more drawings, these ones hidden in her desk drawer. They showed the same man who looked like me, but in these pictures his face was visible. It wasn't my face, it was older, sharper, with eyes that looked too knowing, and in every drawing he was holding the hand of a little girl who looked exactly like Emma, but written under each figure were names I didn't recognize. The man was labeled David, the girl was labeled Sophie. That evening I cooked Emma's favorite dinner, mac and cheese with cut-up hot dogs, the way she'd liked it since she was 4. She ate it politely but without enthusiasm. This is good, she said, but I think I'd prefer something else next time, something more sophisticated. Sophisticated. Emma had never used that word in her life. After dinner, I suggested we look through old photo albums. Maybe seeing pictures would help with her memory. We sat on the couch together, flipping through years of birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family vacations. Emma studied each photo with detached interest, like she was looking at someone else's family. We looked happy, she said finally. Looked, past tense again. We were happy. We are happy. Are we? She turned to look at me directly. Because you seem very sad lately and scared. I'm not scared, I'm just worried about you. You don't need to worry. I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be now. That night, I didn't bother with the baby monitor. Instead, I sat in the hallway outside her room, with my back against the wall, listening. At exactly 2:17 a.m., I heard Emma's voice start up again. He's getting suspicious, asking too many questions. David always was too curious for his own good. Should we accelerate the timeline? Number patience. He'll come around. The father always accepts the replacement eventually. Love makes them blind to the differences. And if he doesn't, then David and Emma can have matching accidents. Tragic family car crash. Very sad. Very final. I recorded everything on my phone. Listened to it back 3 times to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. 2 distinct voices, both coming from Emma's room, both discussing me like I was a problem to be solved. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove Emma to school as usual. But instead of going home, I went to the cemetery where we'd buried Emma's mother 5 years earlier. I needed to see Rebecca's grave. Needed to remember what real loss felt like, because I was starting to suspect that whatever was sleeping in Emma's bed wasn't my daughter at all. Rebecca's headstone looked exactly as I'd left it the previous month. Fresh flowers, clean marble, the inscription I'd chosen because Emma had helped me pick out the words. Beloved wife and mother, she made everything better. But as I stood there, I noticed something that stopped my heart. There was another headstone next to Rebecca's. New granite, recent installation. The inscription read, Emma Catherine Morrison, beloved daughter. Age 11, she was exactly who she was supposed to be. Below that, a date from 2 weeks ago, the day after Emma's bike accident. I called the cemetery office from my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. There's been a mistake, I told the woman who answered. Someone installed a headstone next to my wife's grave without permission. I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison, but our records show you purchased that plot and approved the installation. You came in personally last week to finalize the inscription. That's impossible. My daughter is alive. She's at school right now. Long pause. Sir, I think there might be some confusion. Would you like to speak with our grief counselor? Sometimes after traumatic loss, families experience. I hung up, drove straight to Emma's school and asked to see her. The secretary looked at me with the same polite confusion Emma had shown that first morning. I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison, but we don't have an Emma Morrison enrolled here. Are you sure you have the right school? She's been a student here for 3 years. Mrs. Peterson's class. Plays clarinet in the school band. The secretary checked her computer, frowning. I see the issue. We did have an Emma Morrison, but she was withdrawn from school 2 weeks ago. Family emergency, according to the records. Her father came in personally to handle the paperwork. I am her father. Sir, I think there's been some misunderstanding. The man who withdrew Emma was much older than you. Gray hair, very distinctive eyes. He seemed quite upset about having to move his daughter so suddenly. I drove home in a daze, found the thing that looked like Emma waiting for me in the living room, sitting perfectly still with her hands folded in her lap. How was work? She asked. I didn't go to work. I went to your school. Oh, no surprise in her voice, no curiosity about why. And what did you learn there? I learned that Emma Morrison was withdrawn 2 weeks ago by her father, a man who wasn't me. The thing smiled. Not Emma's smile. Something else wearing Emma's face. And what do you think that means? I think my daughter died in that bike accident and something else came home in her place. Something else. It tilted its head, considering. That's an interesting way to put it. What kind of something else? I don't know. I don't care. I just want my daughter back. But David, it said, and its voice was different now. Older, the voice from the middle of the night conversations. Your daughter was so unhappy, so scared, so confused, always crying, always having nightmares. I made her better. Isn't that what you wanted? She wasn't broken. She was just a kid. She was broken. They're all broken when we find them, but we fix them. We make them perfect. It stood up, and Emma's body moved wrong. Too fluid, too controlled. I can make you perfect too, David. Take away all the sadness, all the worry. You'll still love Emma, but it won't hurt anymore. None of it will hurt. No. Think about it. No more grief over Rebecca. No more fear about Emma's future. No more wondering if you're a good enough father. Just peace, just contentment, just acceptance of exactly who you're supposed to be. It reached out with Emma's hand, and I could see something moving under the skin, something that rippled and shifted like water. All you have to do is let me touch you. One touch, and everything gets better. I ran, left everything behind. Clothes, photos, memories. Just got in my car and drove until I couldn't drive anymore. Ended up in a motel in Nebraska, paying cash and using a fake name. I've been running for 6 months now. Different motels, different cities, always moving. But sometimes I see Emma in crowds. Or what looks like Emma, same face, same age, but with those 2 knowing eyes. And sometimes I see other children who move too perfectly, speak too carefully, smile without any real emotion behind it, always with adults who look tired and confused, like they can't quite remember how their lives changed so dramatically. I think there are more of them out there, things that find broken families and offer to make everything better, things that wear the faces of the people we've lost and promise us perfect versions of love. The worst part is how tempting the offer becomes, how easy it would be to go back, to let that thing touch me with Emma's hand and take away all the pain of losing her, to accept the replacement and pretend it's enough. Some nights, I almost do it. Almost drive back to that house and let whatever lives there now make me forget the difference between my real daughter and the thing that wears her face. But then I remember Emma's real laugh, the way she snorted when something was really funny, the way she'd argue with me about bedtime and homework and all the perfectly imperfect things that made her human. The thing in my house never laughed like that, never argued, never did anything that wasn't exactly what a perfect daughter should do. And that's how I know it wasn't her. If this story made your skin crawl, smash that like button and subscribe for more nightmare fuel. And next time, we'll discover why you should never trust a GPS that takes you to roads that don't exist on any map.